mandate. The procedure that you have to do is send an email to Sir here, that is the president of your ACAE, and he in turn will forward to JFS. You give you email, and you will get the course registration. But it has to be done before 30 years. But my best wishes to you all for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chetan Bhai. And now, friends, we have most important topic, another important topic, burning issues in GST. We all know GST has been implemented in 1st of July, and all of us are now facing implementation issues, some obviously legal issues also. So we have the speaker, learned speaker, C. Virendra Chauhan. He will be deliberating on all the burning issues, and after his deliberation is over, we will have a session of 5-10 minutes. After that, we will plunge into our last event, which is a panel discussion. And all the panelists have already arrived. Some are having lunch. So that will be the last part of our today's session. So now, without wasting any further time, I will request C. Virendra Chauhan ji to make his presentation.
Yeah. The chairman, ACAE, Sri Santosh Kumar Rota, President Sri R.R. Modi, Vice President Mr. Arun K. Agarwal, Vice President Mr. Vasudev Agarwal, General Secretary Mr. Devashish Mitra, my learned friend sitting on the dais Ramesh Patodia ji, other eminent dignitaries present here, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends. It is my prime privilege and extreme honor to be here at this platform of the City of Joy, Calcutta, and the state of West Bengal. I recall the night of 30th of June 2017 and the juncture when the GST was brought in by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. At midnight, he stated that GST is good and simple tax. My first issue, as if the topic assigned to me is burning issues on GST, my first issue is GST is not at all a good and simple tax. Another issue, that GST is containing certain burning issues. I once again dissent with this statement because GST itself is burning. Then I recall a statement made by our Honorable Prime Minister on the very next day, that is 1st July afternoon, on CA Foundation Day, that when the country was under the crisis of demonetization, we chartered accountants cutting short our holidays came from abroad, and we opened our offices midnight, day and night, and he reiterated that probably I understand that you chartered accountants work in the interest of the nation, but I doubt that your hearts knows whether you did it for the nation or whether you did it for yourself or for your clients. I want to send my voice to that honorable Prime Minister once again, that when this country is burning in the heat of this untimely, unmanaged GST, and we chartered accountants are awakening day and night, and all state governments, bureaucrats, and lawmakers at North Block in New Delhi are sleeping day and night. I want to ask to that Honorable Prime Minister once again whether they are sleeping in the interest of the country or in their own interest, or they have not hearing any of our voice, come what may, any provision which is troubling, come what may, any kind of returns freebie or trans 1 or GSTR 1, 2, 3, etc. And none of the software companies, not even GSTN, has been functioning up to the mark. So there is a conflict between the statements made by the finance minister that the chartered accountants, whether they work for the nation or they work for the clients or for their own interests, and dissenting that statement of the Prime Minister, I recall that we chartered accountants are the nation builders. So with this remark, I recall one statement made by one learned finance minister earlier while he was presenting a budget. He said, तकाजा है वक्त का कि तूफानों से जूझो, कब तक चलोगे किनारे किनारे। देश को उन्नत करना है तो चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स की तरफ इशारा करते हुए फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने कहा कि लॉ अबाइडर्स बनो और क्लाइंट्स को लॉ अबाइडर्स बनाओ, कब तक चलोगे यूं हारे हारे। आज उसी स्टेटमेंट को याद करते हुए मैं उसी फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर को ये आवाज पहुंचाना चाहता हूं, नॉर्थ ब्लॉक में बैठकर, न्यू दिल्ली नॉर्थ ब्लॉक में बैठकर आप बेकार की बातें करते हो, पायल के गुणों का इल्म नहीं झनकार की बातें करते हो। बिजनेसेस की और चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स की किसी भी प्रैक्टिकल डिफिकल्टीज का इल्म नहीं और आरसीएम की बातें करते हो। रिवर्स चार्ज मैकेनिज्म के ऊपर मेडिन ऑडल के अंदर एक नेशनल लेवल के सेमिनार में मैंने ब्यूरोक्रेट्स को ये कहा कि अगर आप एक 3B और एक GSTR 1 अगर भर के दिखा दें, हम आपको एक वीक का टाइम देते हैं, फॉरगेट अबाउट ए डे और 2, तो we will comply all the last dates given to us and all the compliances given to us in GST. There is no provision, there is no section, there is no clause in GST which is not full of debates and questions. I have been allotted 60 minutes to talk about the hot issues or the burning issues on GST. I need full 7 days session full time to talk about any topic on GST. Come what may, it is definitions, it is scope of levy, it is composition scheme, it is input tax credit, it is filing of returns, it is anti-profiting provisions or place of supply or time and value, and any topic on GST. I have called upon at occasions to small traders that none of you is eligible for composition scheme, and this limit of 50 lakhs and 75 lakhs, ये सिर्फ हरी घास दिलाई आपको। एक सिंगल भी व्यापारी अगर कंडीशंस फुलफिल कर दे कंपोजिशन स्कीम की, तो आई विल बैट विद हिम। जस्ट सी, interstate supply, interstate outward supply is not eligible for a composition trader. One restriction. Second restriction, that he should not be dealing in services, except restaurant services. Now, if I am a small businessman, even if I am getting a small interest on my FDR or a saving bank account, I am receiving exempted services and I am not eligible for composition scheme. Another condition, that if I am making supply of non-GST items, I am outside the scope. Now, what is this non-GST item? This is say petrol. So, lawmakers have said making non-GST supply normally implies that it is outward supply. So, I am not a petrol trader, so I may be eligible. But if you precisely read the law, it includes inward supply also. So, if you got fuel in your vehicle, you are taking inward supply and you are not eligible. Normally, when a composition taxpayer is there and we professional, we do not look at the provisions so precisely. And when sections were not enough to put certain conditions, they brought in rules also. And they put 3 more new conditions in the rules. First, that you should not be casual or a non-resident trader. Second, that you should not hold any stock which contains any input which you purchased from interstate. And third condition they put, that there should not be any stock which you bought from unregistered taxpayers. Now these 6 conditions put together, anybody can raise hand in this audience that any person in our day-to-day client circle can fulfill these 6 conditions. This is the burning issue as far as small taxpayers are concerned. So almost this scheme is non-existent in my opinion. Let me put some other headings of the title which I want to cover today. Reverse charge. I can see your faces now just by the reading of this heading. Composition levy, registration. I am sitting in West Bengal. I purchased goods from Odisha. I supplied those goods to Uttar Pradesh. Whether I need registration in Odisha? No clarity in law. I am sitting as a chartered accountant in West Bengal. I went to Mumbai. I did a stock audit of HUL, say for 3 months. Whether I need registration there as a casual trader. When I am a jeweler in West Bengal, I go for an exhibition in Maharashtra, I need registration, even if it is for 7 days. Law is not making any clarity whether I need it for when I am a builder, when I am a contractor, when I am a chartered accountant, when I am an architect, when I am a decorator, that when I go outside the state, whether I need registration, and there is a large ambiguity in law. Why a jeweler is not at parity with a chartered accountant who went there for 3 months doing a stock audit? And they answer through tweet or they answer through FAQs, which are totally answered by the lower authorities, which are not binding, and they are contradictory. More issues on registration. If I talk about registration, I can speak for 2 hours and can make all the registration formalities non-functional. I am a private limited company newly formed. I applied for a permanent account number. Authorities sometimes take 7 to 10 days time to allot me a permanent account number. But once I formed the company, I started my business, I started doing my agreements, I started buying movable properties, and I started my entering into contracts, and I'm supposed to apply for within 30 days. And if I didn't, then my input tax credits are disallowed. If I'm a small trader and if I come forward first time in GST regime, let me give you an example. I'm a business center. I want to start a business center for doing Xerox, color copying, etc. And I bought a photocopying machine, color photocopying machine, say for rupees 25 lakhs. And when my turnover tosses after 3 months, about 20 lakhs, I applied for registration. And on the purchase of this machine, I paid GST at the rate of 28%. So 6 lakh rupees, my credit is denied. This is the provision contained in registration. I will come over for some more issues on registration. Input tax credit provisions, transitional issues, definitions, levy of tax, anti-profiteering, credit and debit notes, and place of supply. These are the areas which I want to cover in my deliberation today. But keeping in with the paucity of time, that is 60 minutes, I will be trying to cover up an overview of all these areas. Let us first take up the hottest issue as of now. Let me make you understand provisions of RCM, reverse charge mechanism, through an example. I am a medical institution like Apollo Hospital. I am an educational institution, say maybe ICAI. Now, I may be exempt. Say hospital industry is exempt. It has nothing which is taxable, but it is seeking an advocate service or a GTA service as its inputs. Then it is mandatorily liable for registration even without any threshold. Now, once I am mandatorily liable for registration, then section 9(4) is invoked against me. And 9(4) says that if you buy anything from any unregistered supplier, anything means anything, except those things which are either exempt or which are non-GST levies, like salary or petroleum products, or maybe interest given to a banker, all other things are liable for taxation. And matter does not end here. Suppose there is a clock in a hospital and I have to change the battery of that wall clock. I go to the shop outside, buy a battery for 20 rupees. I have to issue an invoice which is A4 size to that shopkeeper. And then a payment voucher to that shopkeeper that I paid him 20 rupees. Suppose an employee of that particular hospital goes outside into the city and his car gets punctured and he paid 50 rupees for repairing his car, then on that 50 rupees he is supposed to pay RCM to that car mechanic, and he has to invoice that invoice and that payment voucher. Probably he has to take one when containing a computer and a computer operator to issue invoice at that point of time. And then, even if I am ready to pay taxation, GST on these two transactions, first of all, I have to diagnose what is the HSN or SAC code of this particular transaction. Whether this is supply of goods or whether it is supply of services. And then after earmarking that particular HSN code, etc., I have to determine the rate of tax. Then after determination of rate of tax, I have to discharge my tax liability. So now, entire profit and loss count of your profit and loss count of any organization, say having 100 items, are to be divided into two segments, one called services, another called supply of goods. Then after having distributed it in two parts, let us assume this is a segment of goods. Now I have to split these goods into various segments like non-taxable supply of goods, exempted supply of goods, and then taxable supply of goods. Then taxable supply of goods are further to be divided into different categories, taking in view the rate of tax, HSN, and then supplies received from registered dealers, supplies received from unregistered dealers. And those supplies which are received from the registered dealers are liable for reverse charge mechanism. So this whole exercise in almost every segment of industry is almost sine qua non now, mandatory. And we are supposed to file 3B up to 28th of this month, then GSTR1 up to 5th of the next month, and GSTN and software companies have not invented any automatic mechanism that we put the entries into the software and they will generate 3B or GSTR1. They are working halfway, they are working day and night, no doubt. But every question we raise for them, they ask you, download the software once again, make it update, and then try. So this RCM, whether is practically possible at this juncture without having any threshold. And the threshold which is given by the government is 5,000 per day of all the expenses from all the vendors, which is such a meager amount that the 5,000 per day probably nobody will fall into. So it is not difficult to compute the output supply which I can discharge. It is very difficult to compute the RCM. And let us assume we are ready to move within the hardship. Suppose I have no mechanism of doing my computation, manpower, computer, software, so many kinds of problems may be there. I want to know if I don't file my 3B in time, GSTR1 in time, then what will happen? What is the penalty? Government says nothing, only 100 rupee per day. Up to 5,000, relax, Mr. Chauhan, don't talk so much. Then I say, sir, 18% interest. Oh, of course, 18% is no doubt it is there. But sir, I am not able to compute my liabilities, but I can estimate my liabilities. I want to pay advance tax. Oh no, there is no mechanism as such. There is no mechanism in GST to pay advance tax, and you are not able to reduce your liability of interest. Suppose there is a liability of 1 crore of your output after setting off your RCMs, etc. And because of any reason, come what may, you are out of station, you are busy in a conference, you are having some function at home, your accountant is on leave, your computer is not working, software is not there, and you want to discharge 1 crore rupees today. No. You deposit it into your cash ledger, and your cash ledger is your current account. It is not reaching to the exchequer. And whenever you will file your return, say after 10 days or 30 days, you can yourself adjust that particular cash balance into your liability. And that your liability, suppose say 1 crore rupees, and you want to discharge 2 crore, no. You want to discharge 90 lakhs, no. Computer will not accept. You have to discharge exactly the same amount, whatever is your liability. Law says that unless liability accrues, and you admit that liability into the eyes of law or to the revenue by filing a return, we do not accept any money from you. It is unlike income tax. So now we are perturbed, the lawmakers, that this is a gestation period, this is the teething situation, this is the transitional phase. At least difficulties should be mitigated at this juncture, and the large organizations are quite perturbed to say, when I am ready to pay tax, why there is an interest? So this RCM has become a Herculean task to accomplish as far as my experience is concerned. This is 9.3. Government may, on the recommendation of the Council by notification, specify categories of supply of goods or services or both, the tax on which shall be paid on reverse charge basis by the recipient of such goods or services or both, and all provisions of this act shall apply to such recipient as if he is the person liable for paying the tax in relation to the supply of such goods or services or both. Let me recall one more situation. I went out of the state and I went in a restaurant and took my food, say, for 2,000 rupees. And that fortunately, that restaurant was registered. And he charged me, say, 200 rupees at GST, so I got an invoice of 2,200. When I came to my office, I entered into my account, staff welfare account debit 2,200 to cash. The lawmaker said, no, this is a wrong entry. What you should put in, that 2,000 is staff welfare, 200 is ineligible in tax credit, bracket mein GST, in terms of section 17(5), and then to cash, 200. I admit it. Okay, sir, no problem. But next day, once again, I went to the same state, outside the state. And this time I opted to go to a unregistered restaurant, because yesterday I faced some heat. So this time I changed the restaurant and went to an unregistered restaurant. When I went to the unregistered restaurant, he also gave me an invoice of 2,000. No doubt he did charge tax. And I came back to my office and I put the figure into my computer saying staff welfare debit to cash. But here I was called upon to pay reverse charge, because I purchased the services from an unregistered taxpayer. And I want to discharge my liability from this 2,000. Lawmaker said, no, you cannot. You have to get yourself registered in that particular state where you ate the meal. Because that restaurant can only pay CGST and SGST because of the place of supply principle. Because in case of a restaurant or an immovable property, section 12(3) applies, and there the place of supply is that particular state where your meal. यानी कि आगे से 4 पराठे 4 के साथ बांध के ले जाना. पर ऐसे ही करना पड़ेगा. कैश मीमो को अचार बना के भी खा सकते हो सर. बाहर वाली स्टेट में जाके अगर मान लो मैं एक होटल में स्टे करता हूं और वो होटल मेरे से अनरजिस्टर्ड रूम रेंट चार्ज करता है 2,000 पर डे, आई कैन नॉट डिस्चार्ज IGST liability sitting in West Bengal. I have to discharge that RCM in that particular state. Lawmakers are not making any clarification that in case you went outside the state and you want to discharge any liability on RCM, you can do it in your state. Because lawmaker says that particular tax has to go to that particular state. In another situation, suppose I purchased stationery from there for 2,000 rupees from unregistered person, and I took that stationery back to my West Bengal. Then I have to discharge IGST in that transaction. But by dint of discharging that liability, the supply becomes subject to mandatory registration. When I asked this to CBC officials, they said, Mr. Chauhan, that's what we want. that you discharge the IGST liability on transactions which you bought from outside the state, and we want to capture all those unregistered suppliers who are till date absconding. Fine enough. But sir, you have asked me to give an invoice and a payment voucher which is quite a large format to that particular supplier. So you, sir, please tell me, when I go outside the state for doing any business, like my salesperson, should I carry my computer, or how can I issue an invoice to that person? The CBs replied, Mr. Chauhan, we have not envisaged this problem, and in times to come, we'll definitely look into it, how you can make compliance of your statutory liability. So how possibly we can advise to our client agent today? No answer to me. I'm just coming after completing. There is a question answer session. Otherwise, if one question will start, my 60 minutes will end. So I will definitely come to your question, or probably I may be covering. I may be wrong, sir, but I will definitely come to your questions. Being a member of Indirect Tax Committee, I very casually interact with the lawmakers in CBC. So what they reply, how they talk, and what law is, we normally sit face to face reading the law. If it is a self-generated document to be kept in your records, no doubt you can keep. But lawmakers say that you have to issue, and issue means what? If it is self-issue, then there may be a different question. So we will come over to these questions. 5% of reverse charge, cashew nuts, tobacco leaves, BD, supply of lottery, and sale. Probably these are not normally taken by every industry, but 9 services under reverse charge are services provided by GTA by way of transportation of goods by road, and services by individual advocate and senior advocates. These are normally consumed by most of the businesses. So all other services are not of paramount importance. I am skipping them all. And 9.4 says that central tax in respect of the supply of taxable goods, services, or both by supplier who is not registered to a registered person shall be paid by such person on reverse charge basis as the recipient, and all the provisions will apply. So this 5,000 limit of per basis is also ambiguous. And industries like hospitals or educational institutions are perturbed कि what kind of exemption government is given to us. When all our inward supplies are taxable, why they are exempting us? It is better we discharge our tax liability on our output supply also. Now there is one apprehension that section 23 says that person engaged exclusively in non-taxable supplies or wholly exempt supplies under CGST, SGST or IGST law, and agriculturist also, then probably the rigor of 24 will not apply. Means thereby, section 24 starts with non-obstante clause, and that non-obstante clause refers to section 22, which talks about 20 lakhs threshold. And section 24 says that if there is a RCM liability on a hospital, by invoking the provisions of section 9.3, that is mandatory RCM, then 23 will not apply. 23 would be saved. Means that hospital need not to take registration. This one school of thought says. I will repeat. Some faces are raising questions. Section 9.3 says that if you avail GTA services, then mandatorily you have to charge RCM, reverse charge. And even if there is a small transaction of say 5,000, then you are liable for registration under section 24. because then there is no threshold. And once you are registered, 9(4) invokes. 9(4) says that when you buy anything or any supply you receive from any unregistered person, then a registered person is liable for 9(4) RCM. But some school of thought says that since 24 is not referring to 23 and 23 is saying that in case I am dealing exclusively in non-taxable goods, I am not liable for registration. But I dissent with this view. Reason being that lawmaker issued a notification saying that if I am liable for TDS, deducting TDS, I am liable for registration by invoking section 24. But that notification says that if you are only liable for TDS deduction, but otherwise you are an exempt entity, or you are a person having threshold less than 20x, then you are not liable for registration. So lawmakers are very well aware, while granting such kind of exemption to an exempted unit, that at the time of deducting TDS, you are not liable for registration. So at the time of RCM, they were aware, and they have very well covered RCM and TCS also here. So that is the reason I dissent with this view, and my opinion is that hospitals and educational institutions or all exempted entities who are not liable to discharge tax as on today, subject to various notifications under services and goods, if they are receiving 9(3) RCM, they are liable for 9(4) RCM. So this is creating a lot of hue and cry among the exempted industry. This is 24. Now, RCM on reimbursable expenses. Suppose my employees went outside the state, he is a salesman, and he spent expenditures on various expenses. And after a trip of 15 days, he brought a bunch of, say, 50 papers, and he claimed 10,000 or 20,000 rupees from the company as his expenses. Nowadays, what we do? We just say miscellaneous expenses or conveyance expenses or marketing expenses debit to his impress account. Cash. Now what will happen now under GST? We have to unbundle that bundle. And each voucher from that bundle is now an independent supply. Then we have to dismantle this bundle into two parts, services and goods. And then each voucher has to be given a name that this supply is under such and such HSN. And then we have to raise that invoice, which my learned friend is saying it has to be a self-serving invoice. So that self-serving invoice would be as much as the voucher submitted by the employee. And then I have to discharge liability, and I have to create entry for each transaction which he did outside. So how much of that is there into RCM that we have to see. And that is the only reason that this freebie and GST are becoming Herculean task. Otherwise, there is nothing as far as estimation of tax liability is concerned. And lawmakers at the same time are saying that they will not extend the date. Reason being, had there been provisions for depositing advance tax, they could have very easily could have ended the date. But now, since payment of tax is linked with the submission of return, there is probably no scope of extending the return, and say hopefully they may think of 30th September tax audit returns date may be extended. These are the provisions for advance tax. So many of us may be thinking that because of yesterday's incident in Haryana, probably the date would be extended. In my opinion, no. I have already spoken to some authorities, and they are saying that they have already conducted various meetings on these issues, and categorically things are coming out, no extension of dates as far as 3B and GSTR 1 or 2 are concerned. Conveyance expenses of his own car on kilometer basis. Conveyance expenses through local conveyance by cab, travel through air and train, local buses, food expenses, other business and party expenses. Now we have to create STC codes or STC codes and rate of tax of all these tax in our day-to-day transactions. In case of unregistered supply outside the state, this I have already deliberated upon. Double taxation on freight charges on imports. You see, earlier what used to happen in service tax, that there used to be no taxation on freight, and when government introduced freight, first when we used to send goods outside the country, then they invoked provisions of levy when we used to bring goods inside our country, and then they thought that even if you avail freight facilities from a non-resident, those also they are liable to taxation. Then businesses planned their affairs in such a way that they started calling their imports through CIF mechanism. So there is no freight. The lawmakers become prudent, and they said that even in case of CIF transactions, we create a hypothetical situation that 10% of the total CIF would be the value of the freight, and on reverse charge mechanism they started levying services. So once again the same provisions have been brought in. But at the same time, when I go to the valuation rules under the customs, I find that entire CIF value is subject to basic custom duty. And CIF, after adding this basic custom duty, becomes the value of the purposes of IGST. So now, not only I pay CIF plus BCD and then IGST, at the same time, 10% value of CIF is subject to IGST. So इसे कहते हैं ट्रिपल आर, और अभी तक लॉ मेकर्स ने इसकी कोई सुनवाई की नहीं है. This is another debatable issue. Through this corrigendum, they have once again brought in the same provisions. 10% of CIF value would be the value for. This composition probably I should skip because it has larger issues, and lawmakers admit that these are drafting guesses. So I have thrown light on this particular provision, that composition scheme is having certain anomalies as far as drafting of law is concerned, and probably in the times to come it will reach to the ears of the lawmakers and they will bring suitable amendments or clarifications on these aspects. These are the conditions ABC further put under rules. Here once again question arises whether rules can bring out certain conditions which the statute is not having. So this is in conflict with section 10, which contains provisions relating to composition levy. So in our opinion, rule cannot bring into new conditions which are applicable on composition suppliers. Registration related issues, one paramount question comes that if I have a property outside the state and it is let out for commercial purposes, whether I can charge IGST sitting here in West Bengal, or I have to go to that destination and seek local registration. Even if the property is having either below or above 20 lakhs rupees, of rent. So if it is about 20 lakhs of rent, I am under mandatory registration, and if it is interstate transaction, that even if it is 2 lakhs rupees, I am liable for registration. Suppose I am a salaried person, and I am having a property outside the state and getting rent of rupees only 2 lakhs, that I am liable for registration. This one school of thought saying, and another school of thought is saying that the place of supply in case of immoral property outside the state, there is no need of registration. But my opinion is different. I say IGST and CGST is determined by two factors. One is location of supplier and another is the place of supply. And if they both fall under two different states, then the IGST would be applicable. So the location of supply is in West Bengal and the place of supply by dint of application of provisions of section 12(3), being it is an immovable property, is outside the state. So IGST is applicable in such situation. And all exempted units like hospital or a small nursing home, even if they are having 10 or 20 beds and the turnover is, say, exempted turnover is about 20 lakhs, but they are having a small pharmacy and getting a rent of even 10,000 rupees a month, 1,20,000 in a year, that pharmacy is liable for registration. And they will have discharge tax liability only on that 1,20,000 worth of turnover through pharmacy, and rest of their income is exempt. But they have to report their entire turnover into their GSTR1. And once they are registered, 9(4) would be applicable and complete RCM tax liabilities would be there on all their inward supplies. So I am not perturbed to the extent of discharging tax liability, but I am unable, I am technically incompetent to calculate the RCM and to fulfill the obligations put forth by the lawmakers while discharging the tax liability. Multiple trade names on single GST are not available. Difficulty in obtaining PAN by local bodies and municipalities. Many of the organizations, clubs, etc., because mutuality is no more alive now. Even our Institute of Chartered Accountants has started paying tax even on membership fee. So all bar associations, all clubs, way back on 1/7/2012 when the list came, were defined as distinct persons as compared to the entity. So a club and a member are two distinct entities, and therefore they are covered under GST also. So we have short opinions from various stalwarts into our legal fraternity, and they have given opinion that now mutuality is no more alive as far as GST is concerned. So all clubs, associations, all bars, or chartered accountants like our ACAE, this organization, in my opinion, have become liable for GST. So, आपने स्टैंप लगा दिया सर अपने व्यूज के ऊपर. इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट, मैंने जरा टाइम का ध्यान नहीं किया सर. हाउ मच मिनट्स आर देयर? 10 minutes. Okay, sir. Input tax credit, I have some issues, sir. There are 4 conditions I need to fulfill before I can claim input tax credit. He is in possession of a tax invoice or debit issued by a registered supplier. I agree, sir. This is a good condition. Another condition is he has received the goods or services or both. I still agree, sir. Tax paid to the government either in cash or through utilization of ITC by the other person from whom I have bought the goods. Here I have some issues, sir. He has furnished the return. Means the taxpayer who want to claim the ITC, he should have filed the return. These are the 4 conditions one should fulfill before he can claim ITC. So why an honest taxpayer suffer from non-deposit of tax by supplier? Lot of litigation already. Case of CC versus KK Industries so and so is conflicting. What I want to say here, suppose I bought goods from Reliance, it's a large and a reputed corporation, and I paid the money in advance, 10 lakhs rupees worth of goods, plus 2 lakhs worth of tax, 12 lakhs I have discharged through demand draft, and then Reliance sent me the goods. But Reliance can afford not filing the returns, because he can enjoy paying 80% of tax. He can enjoy paying 5,000 worth rupees for every return, and he is not discharging his tax liabilities over the next 6 months. I am being penalized. I will not get the input tax credit. Where the lawmakers are quite confident that this particular small entity has already paid tax to a large entity, but still the onus lies on me. And this KK Industry Supreme Court has well said that unless a collusion is established between two entities, the default lies on the supplier and who has collected the legitimate tax as an agent of the government. You see, business is nothing but an agent of the government to collect tax from the customer and to deposit. So Reliance is a statutory agent of the government who has collected the tax, but who is penalized? लॉ मेकर्स कहते हैं जिसके ऊपर पेनल्टी लगा सकते हैं उसी से तो पेनल्टी लेंगे ना, जिससे टैक्स ले सकते हैं उसी से तो लेंगे ना, उससे हम ले नहीं सकते, आपको हम छोड़ नहीं सकते. दिस इज द लॉ वी हैव मेड. Another issue, sir. What if, for reasons beyond the control of taxable person, return not filed or a survey takes place, no ITC for all purposes, the IC, so and so case, Supreme Court. Sir, there is a private limited company having 2 directors, and it is doing good business altogether, having a very good turnover and paying regular taxation, GST. But there can be certain issues which arise either between the directors, there is a dialogue into the company because of that dispute, or there can be a survey which may take place of various any authority and books are impounded. I just want to create a situation, that situation is beyond the control of the entity. And for a year, the company could not file return. But after 1 year, when the lawmakers thought that now this is too much, this company is not paying taxation, they conducted a survey and raised the demand against the entity. At that particular point of time, they are saying that your turnover is say 5 crores rupees, you pay tax at the rate of 28% without setting off your tax liability. Probably this is too much, because the situation is like, I went to a banker and opened my saving bank account, and banker put a condition, Mr. Chauhan, you have to get your passbook updated every 3 months. I didn't go for 1 year. तो बैंक वालों के पास जब मैं अपना पैसा निकालने गया तो उन्होंने बोला, मिस्टर चौहान आपका पैसा गल गया. Now deposit once again and withdraw after getting the passbook updated. Now, when I am purchasing goods and the seller is depositing tax into the exchequer of the government, that money is going on my behalf to the government. But after 1 year, when survey took place, the lawmakers कहते हैं कि वो जो पैसा सेलर ने आपके बिहाफ पे जमा करा गल गया, खत्म हो गया. No credit would be out. So even the law does not provide the mitigating factors that under unavoidable circumstances, if the entity proves that there was a legitimate reason not to file the return, the recovery of the output liability cannot be recovered without setting off the input tax liability. Let me create one more situation. Suppose I think a particular fabric is exempt, sari ka fall, and I kept on doing business for years together, but after a survey took place, the lawmaker said, no, it is taxable, it is a garment. So I didn't file my return for a couple of years. And when a survey took place, the liability arose only of output tax liability without setting off the input tax liability. Till date, there is no law as such. So in GST, if I would not be given input tax credit because of the condition I didn't file my return, it would be harsh provision. So I may be concluding, probably I may not be able to cover up all the points. This payment of within 180 days is also having certain issues. I'm skipping it. There are certain issues in block credits, non-creditable items. These are the areas where I want to raise my voice, that use of own vehicles for transportation of goods such as mining companies, food companies, etc. Here also I am not getting credit of used vehicles. Vehicles used for transportation of items other than goods like money, securities, petroleum products, alcohol, etc. This is also bringing certain legal questions. I want to cover one last area, is anti-profiteering. Without wasting much time, I am just closing my deliberations. What is anti-profiteering provisions? Anti-profiteering provisions is in nutshell government want that if my output tax liability is say from 28% to 18%, and I got benefits of input tax credits, say earlier my input tax credit was 2 lakhs, now it is 3 lakhs. So 1 lakh worth of profit I earned as far as inputs are concerned, and there is a reduction in output tax liability. So in a nutshell, suppose 10% of my gross turnover, I got the benefit, and I'm supposed to pass on this benefit to the customers. But you learned chartered accountants, please tell me whether indirect taxation converted on the debit side or on the credit side has ever been the part and partial of calculating my price? No. Because when I purchase goods, I put my input tax credit in a separate account. These are recoverable credits. And when I sell my goods, I put my payable in a different account. So when I made my pricing policy, I only calculated my cost of raw material, and whenever I'm selling my goods, I calculated only my sale price without taxes. So definitely, all my benefits will be passed on to the customers, but where is an embargo to increase my price? Let me give an example lastly. I'm a restaurant. I sell my dal makhani for 200 rupees to the customer ex taxes, without taxes. And now, because taxes have been reduced on a restaurant, the customer can get this dal makhani for rupees 200 plus less amount of tax, 210. Earlier it was 220. So today, if I want to sell my this dal makhani for 300 rupees plus taxes, who can stop me? लॉ मेकर्स जवाब देते हैं, आप करके देखो, हम देख लेंगे. तो क्या देख लेंगे? There is no law as such. So industry should not frighten at all if they want to raise their prices, because they never kept the inputs into their pockets and they never kept output tax liability into their pockets. If they were lesser earlier, it were higher today, he cannot do anything. They were higher yesterday and they are lesser today, he cannot do anything. But as far as price is concerned, that is always the liberty of the taxpayer, and we can do this. So with these remarks, I end up my deliberation. I have already probably closed 60 minutes. Now, if there are certain questions, I would be glad to pick up them.
We'll take only one or two questions.
Yes, sir.
Only one or two questions, please. Yeah. Only one or two, please. Chiruda.
Okay. I think my question will be common for most of the people. You know that migration, service tax registered people migrated to GST, but many of them do not have they will not cross the limit of 20 lakhs. They want to cancel the registration and they are not getting the opportunity to cancel, and GST are being paid, taxes have to be paid, and all kinds of problems are facing.
Yes, sir. Sir, there are a lot of functions which are not available on GSTN, but GSTN is saying that even if you apply through a mail or through any kind of communication you send to the department, and you are not liable. You see, in fact, there was a window to apply for cancellation of your registration because we automatically migrated from the earlier regime. And this migration happened on 21st of June. So 30 days or 60 days window has already gone. It was 16th of August, probably 60 days. Extended time was up to 16th of August. So even up to 16th of August, the relevant form, that is GSTR 29, probably is not invoked into the GSTN. So those need not to file 3B, no GSTR 1, they only need to apply through a mail to the authorities and they will listen. Is it, sir?
So friends,
thank you very much, sir.
Friends, we had a wonderful deliberation on the burning issues. Really, most of the issues were very, very important, and we were enlightened by such a analytical presentation of the entire view. Many things told in a very, very short period of time. But then we all are awaiting for the most important event of the day, which is a panel discussion. And all the panelists have already arrived. I will request now our treasurer, Sri Ramesh Kumar Todia, to offer a formal word of thanks. And after that, the panel discussion in 5 minutes. Don't go away, right? There will be a little bit of change in the setup. So, is Ramesh Kumar Patodia, please.
Friends, after the sumptuous lunch and dessert, Mr. Chauhan has ensured that the desserts get burnt away in our stomach with the burning issues of GST. He began by saying that the Honorable Minister पायल का इल्म नहीं झंकार की बातें करते हैं. But I think the ministers and those involved in drafting the legislation have ensured that our clients take always the chartered accountants for dinner wherever they go, so that they can correctly arrive at the GST liability, whether be it a registered or the unregistered restaurant area. So friends, we are thankful to Mr. Chauhan for giving us such a wonderful deliberation, and we have noted that he can continue for 7 days with his burning issues, and we'll definitely try to have a 2-week session with these burning issues. Thank you, sir, once and big round of applause. Friends, we are thankful to our sponsors, Imami, Srei, and Century Ply, without whose support this conference would not have been possible. A big round of applause, please. Also, friends, we are thankful to the media partner, Millennium Post. Please give them a big round of applause. And last but not the least, friends, all of you must have got this beautiful special edition of the journal which was unveiled today. We are thankful to the entire editorial team led by C.A. Anup Sangai for bringing this on this occasion, friends. A big round of applause, friends. Now, fireworks are about to begin, friends. With the next session, that is the panel discussion with the power-packed house. Friends, please don't go away and wait for things to come. Thank you.
Now we request our Secretary, CA Dr. Devashish Mitra, to take over the proceedings, please.
ACAE, the Association of Corporate Advisors and Executives, was formed as a society in 1960 by 30 founder members. The motto of the association is "Work is Worship." This association has dedicated itself in creating a common platform for people associated with various fields related to law and taxation, accounting, audit,
Hello, check, check. I request Dr. Devasis, yeah, please. Please start the proceedings. Devasis. Friends, please take your seats.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start the panel discussion in a few minutes' time. May I request all of you to kindly take your seats. The topic, ladies and gentlemen, for this evening's panel discussion is economic resurgence, myth or reality. And we all know how important and relevant that topic is. We have an eminent panel of speakers. May I request Professor Shubham Mukherjee to please come and take his seat on the dais. Mr. P.R. Ramesh, please kindly take a seat on the dais. Dr. Sambit Patra, please, sir. Dr. Jayanta Dasgupta. Sri Johar Sarkar. Sir, take your cup of tea, not at all. Please, please, sir. Enjoy the tea. Mr. Chetan Dalal is here. Please. And Mr. Arun Kumar Jagataka, please. We'll take just a few minutes time for the microphones to be fitted.
ये क्लिप नहीं है इसलिए खोलिए और बेल्ट में घुस आइए हम लोग का रोज काम है ना
Interested in quizzing or in elocution contests or panel discussions in Calcutta, we can never miss the omnipresence of Professor Dr. Shubham Mukherjee. He is to be everywhere and is conducting programs. And it's a great, luck and great pleasure to have him with us. You see, before this program started, he was having a meeting with all his panelists, telling them what to do, what to speak. But many of his panelists I could see were listening to him, but I don't know how many of them will follow follow his instructions because most of them are so independent in their mindset. A few words about Dr. He is a PhD, having more than 42 years experience in teaching. He has taught in IIT, he has taught in St. Xavier's, and he is presently the director in Bhawanipur Education Society. And he is also the advisor of the state education policy, of the state education policy of the state of West Bengal.
The right to
Ladies and
education.
gentlemen, can you put our hands together for
ACAE, the Association of Corporate Advisors and Executives, was formed as a society in 1960 by 30 founder members. The motto of the association is "Work is Worship." This association has dedicated itself in creating a common platform for people associated with various fields related to law and taxation, accounting, audit and management. This presentation includes comments of past presidents, office bearers, committee members and members. The association has been successful in achieving the summits of professionalism. Their past years had been filled with joy, gaiety and enthusiasm, and they have a firm belief that their coming days will also be cheerful and will have a prudent approach across the globe, carving out a bright future for their association.
Wanted to get the CV that was given to me reconfirmed. And when he saw the CV, he said that he wanted to add some words to the CV that was already given to him. And when he added, I looked at the CV and I said that, wow, he is actually a doctor, he's a PhD. Dr. Jayanta Das Gupta has been India's ambassador to WTO from 2010 to 2014. He is an IAS officer. And he has been there, and he has been also the Secretary, Economic and Advisory Council to the PM. A person very well qualified to be part of this panel today. And you see, a PhD, an IAS officer, I think, you see, it is our great fortune to have a person of his eminence. And offer them memento on behalf of the institute.
These are beautiful, huh?
Oh, they are real roses.
Yeah.
Our next panelist, who has regaled us in the first technical session, Mr. Chetan Dalal. When he was making a presentation, at one point of time, he made a presentation. This, Mr. Dalal, if you can listen to me. At one point of time, he said, most boring speaker. At a point of time, when he was making a presentation, he said that the best speaker there. Well, I was looking at it, and then, see, Mr. Ramesh, this is for you. You see, Mr. Dalal, when he was speaking, he had a list of 4 speakers, and he had ranked them on the list of marks. And when we were seeing the marks, we found that P.R. Ramesh had higher marks than Mr. Dalal, and the marks were given by him himself. But at the end of the day, he was telling us about forensic audit and how frauds take place. He ensured that his marks were higher, and he was made the best speaker on the, as per the presentation that was there. Mr. Dalal, you see, on a very serious note, at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, we recognize his great contribution to the forensic audit course that we have. It has been, he has been a path breaker on this course. And if this course is doing well in the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, take a lot of credit will go to Mr. Chetan Dalal. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chetan Dalal. A memento has been given earlier, so I will not request a memento presentation for him. And the last speaker for this thing, Mr. Arun Kumar Jagatramka. I think we have heard him speak in earlier conferences. He is a chartered accountant, a rank holder, and he is also the chairman and managing director of Gujarat Inari Coke. I have been told, I have not really heard him speak at length, but I have been told that he is a very, very good speaker. So I think we will look forward to his articulating his views. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Arun Kumar Jagatramka. May I request our young member Vivek Agarwal to come forward and offer a memento on behalf of the Institute, on behalf of the association. So, Professor Mukherjee, now the session is all yours.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you for those very kind words and introduction to all speakers. It's easing my job, and it'll be easier for me to get onto the firing line straight away. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the panel discussion, Economic Resurgence, Myth or Reality. I think as the moderator, I must delimit the topic the way I understand it. Economic resurgence, we'd obviously like to know the time. It can't go back to prehistoric times or British era, the 19th century or 20th century. If there's a resurgence, there must have been a surgence sometime. So where do we talk about that surgence? I think we should be limiting our talk to what has happened during the post-independence era, or else it becomes too long for us. The place is India. We are not talking about a global phenomena. And the region, it's not about West Bengal. We would be looking for surgence and resurgence in that case, all of us. But we are looking at India. We are looking at in the larger, but India is so many states. So can you think about resurgence only in the generality and not about what's happening in the states? So clearly states would also be a rider in the resurgence. Now coming to the topic of myth and reality, I think it's very interesting for us to distinguish between the two. As rational beings, we believe in certainty. And the only certainty in life is death. And the most uncertain path, and I have the doctor next to me, would say about life. We don't know how long it will last. Yet, Dudley Sayers, when he was talking about economic development and growth, he says, the whole idea about economic growth or economic development is based on the primitive axiom of believing that life is better than death. What is myth? What is reality? For believers, you'd say Krishna is a reality. For others, he is a mythological figure. He's a myth. Point remains, does he live in this context? Ram, is he a myth or is he a reality? And even if he is a reality, what has happened to Ram Rajya? When we talk about Jesus, the believers call him a prophet, and the reality is that they crucified him. When we talk about Muhammad, we believe in his words. Ask his believers, they don't know what his body and face looks like. So it's a very interesting debate when you talk about what is myth and what is reality. It's like looking at the desert, and when you're looking at the sand dunes, you don't know what is going to be the pattern of the sand dunes. What you saw 5 minutes ago is going to change today. So the same is true about day and night. When it's night here, it's going to be breaking dawn somewhere in the west. And when it is night there, it's breaking dawn here. What is the reality of India? We are the fastest growing economy. The reality that we have the largest milk producing country in the world. We have the second largest grain producer in the world. We have the third largest fleet of scientists and technicians. We have the largest vegetables and fruit production in the world. And just when you're saying, oh, lovely India, you have 400 million illiterates. Out of 130 billion people, we don't win a single Olympic gold. You have 200 malnourished children. You have huge divide between the rich and the poor. We are still not a caring society where inclusive growth is still a myth. For others, it is a reality. In this context, what better way to start the discussion than to start it from somebody who could look at it from the macroeconomic perspective. And before I ask him to speak, Dr. Gupta, I moved down the flanks like a football coach. We had used the flanks, and they'll come into the middle, and the strikers are on two sides. And some of them, of course, like Rooney has retired. The rest will continue to flog the battle, and we'll move down that. But the speakers, I request you to keep their discussions within 4 minutes at the outset, what they feel about the topic and how they'd like to lay it out. And based on what they say, we will have questions arising from their arguments and counter-arguments. And then I'll put in my own bit of asking them questions, that issues that would perhaps not been raised. Now, as you notice, we are 7 of us. And like the rays of the sun, there are 7 colors of the vibgyor. If we blend, then you have celestial wisdom to carry back home. You have a white light. If you don't blend, you still carry back home a rainbow of brilliant colors. With that note, let me ask Dr. Dasgupta to give you a few points. Please restrict yourself to 4 minutes. You can stand and speak, or you could be here.
Speaking on this panel. The first point I wanted to make in this regard is that when we speak of economic resurgence, of course, Dr. Mukherjee has mentioned taking a view from 1947 onwards. But I would restrict it, let's say, to the period 2002 to 7, when the economy, not only in India but in the world, was booming. Then we had the great meltdown and the global economic crisis. And the green shoots started appearing in 2012-13. And since then, how have the economies been doing? If we look at the global scenario, we will find that Europe has been progressing very slowly. In that sense, the US economy, for instance, is showing growth of less than 2%. And we have been clocking 8%, 7.5%. And for the current year, the predictions are between 6.75 and 7.5. This is according to the Economic Survey Part 2, which came out on the 11th of August. So if you compare with the US, with China, with Russia, with the other BRICS countries, with Europe, you will find, with Japan, you will find that we are showing very strong growth. That is why amongst the larger economies, we are the fastest growing. That is a sure sign of economic resurgence. The second point is about FDI flows. Now, when a foreign direct investment comes, obviously the foreign investor, whether it's an institutional investor or somebody investing in the core industry, manufacturing sector, services, is sanguine that his investments will bear fruits, will fetch him a good dividend. So that is another sure sign of the health of the economy. The third thing which I wanted to point out is the industrial production index. Now, of course, it's not been as healthy and robust as in terms of growth as we would have liked to see, especially from the employment point of view. But it has always been positive, and the latest figures show that it has been growing at about 2%. There are various reasons, and we will delve into that later. But industrial production has been moving up. That is as far as the manufacturing sector, the industries overall are concerned. If you look at the services sector, the growth has slowed down just a wee little bit. It contributes approximately 55% to the GDP, but it is again not slowed down very much. It is still above 6%. So that is something which is very positive, especially since our services sector is a large part of it is geared towards the external market in terms of exports. And we all know that the export market has suffered a bit. Our exports in services, in fact, showed a dip 2 years ago. But despite that, it is now showing good signs of increase. The Nikkei Manufacturing Procurement Managers Index. Now, we have been showing a positive above 50 score on that for very long, except for a slight dip in 1 or 2 months. And that is again a sure sign that people are investing in inventories. The manufacturing managers, they are quite assured of a good return. And that is why they are going ahead and they are casting their votes in favor of economic growth. The last 2 points on this aspect of on this aspect of growth. Exports were down for about 2 years, month on month, year on year. Now they have started moving up, and we have shown profits in terms of our realization. We have shown export growth overall, and our current account deficit has gone down. It is now 0.7% of GDP at the last count, which is a very good sign. It was 1.1% earlier. So we are managing our current account deficit. Our foreign exchange reserves have grown. Again, the latest figures show that they are in the region of $394 billion US, which is very, very healthy. If we look at the countries which are having a current account deficit, large countries, and their foreign exchange reserves, we are second only in terms of the numbers, next to Brazil. The last factor on this, while I'm on this, is that oil prices have been, they had gone up to about $124 a barrel. They came down to about 35 odd. Now they have stabilized in the region of $45 to $55. And that is a good sign because we are very heavily dependent on imports of oil for running the wheels of our economy. And that is something which is perhaps the short to medium term indications are that it will remain in this range. Of course, in the long term, perhaps we'll have greater contributions from renewable energy sources. There could be a technological breakthrough and energy costs could come down. On negative aspects, I must mention 1 or 2 points which, time permitting, I would like to expand upon. The worrying aspect is the twin balance sheet problem, the problems of non-performing assets, which is leading to constriction of credit growth and to perhaps a great deal of problems for the banks. The non-performing assets have gone up to about 9.6%. And this will need to be tackled by the government in a very strong manner. Otherwise, industrial investment in industries, in whether it is in the manufacturing sector, in the services sector, that will suffer. The telecom sector also, we have seen the average revenue per user going down since last year because of the entry of a very large player and something which is akin to predatory pricing. Now, whether that is good for the industry, bad for the industry, that is the real problem that we are facing. We have distress in agriculture. That is contributing approximately 17% of the GDP. And the loan waivers, agriculture is in real stress. And the loan waiver scheme was perhaps important, it was necessary, but that is going to lead to a 0.7% reduction in our overall GDP. That is the kind of impact that we are going to see. Finally, the last thing, it is about employment. It is last, but not the least important. It is the most important thing. It is about employment growth. That is something which we are facing a very, very serious problem on. We are having growth. We are going to have increased incomes for the economy as a whole. Whether that is going to be distributed in an equitable manner or not, that is one of the most important problems that the country is going to face. And with that is associated the issue of skill development. Professor Mukherjee mentioned that we have the third largest or second largest force of scientists and engineers and all. But as we all know, many of the engineers that we are producing, the science graduates that we are producing, are unemployable because of the poor quality of education. That is a glaring problem, and the National Skill Development Report 2016 says that we have a huge problem on our hands of training approximately 13 crore people within the next few years. So I will close at this juncture on this note. Thank you.
I think in all fairness, I should be telling you about the questions you could perhaps react to on the points you raised. You said that between 2002 and 2007, India was a booming economy. But during that boom, we found a very strange thing happen, and that was asset inflation. The money was going into the stock, it was going into gold, it was going into real estate, but employment didn't grow up. But if you go to the previous period, you had a lower rate of growth, maybe 30%, whereas this was about 300% at times. But we generated employment. So the idea of jobless growth, where did you think it came from? That's a question that I need you to ask. The second thing is, in just about 100 years ago, 1 Indian rupee would fetch $13. During our independence period, 1 rupee was equal to $2. 1966, Sachin Chaudhary devalues the currency. It was 4.5 rupees to $1. Even in 80s, it was around 30 rupees to $1. Today, it is 70 rupees to $1. Why thereabout? Why do you think this has happened? If India is doing so brilliantly, then why is this falling? The third is you refer to NPAs, but NPAs, I do believe, is more because of the Basel norms too, rather than the question of viability of units. So why should we evaluate our banks in terms of some other countries' yardsticks, Western yardsticks of Basel norms, and not do it in terms of viability? Perhaps the units are not so unviable as we make it out to be. Agricultural distress. At the same time, India is now able to feed 30 billion people on their own with surpluses. Of course, we are wasting the additional production, but we are long away from buying food to sustain ourselves. So how do you think the distribution can take place? your 4 questions to lead to what you said, and perhaps some more after we hear Mr. Jagat Ramka, the industrialist. But my questions to Mr. Jagat Ramka is on the lead is, there are 5 fundamental forces that have taken place. First, liberalization. In liberalization, we do find that there is serious competition. Instead of more players getting in, there's more grouping. Look at cement industry, look at pharmaceuticals industry. So you find that there's a process by which people are collating and only the larger are getting to stay on. On the other end, when you talk about globalization, India is today getting foreign exchange, foreign development from foreign sources about $4 billion, which is what China got 10 years ago. So where does that put India? There is the explosion in demand, but the Chinese vibrancy has led to a situation where our prices in comparison to Chinese goods is about 15 to 17% higher. So how will you tackle that when you're going for an industrial growth on that front? And agriculture and industry put together is generating less GDP than services sector. And the myth is believing industry and agriculture is delivering. The reality is the services sector, which is your engine of growth. So what would be your take on that?
Thank you, Professor Mukherjee. At the outset, the subject that was today given was economic resurgence, myth or reality. I would like to state that I do believe that it is really a reality today, that we are looking at a reality of economic resurgence. And about the period that you mentioned initially from independence, I don't think I will go to that far. But I would like to look at only maybe last 1 or 2 decades. That from 91 till 2017, last 25, 30 years, what has been happening? Growth, then there is a downturn, then there is another period of growth, then there was a severe downturn, and now we are trying to come out of that downturn. The NPAs and most of the globalization related issues or the industry cartelization that you told are actually result of that era. Particularly 2007 was also an aberration because we were caught in the midst of a China-led world industrial boom.
You wanted to react
where
to
we
the
were not
Barcelona
prepared with our infrastructure or our raw material sourcing or any other means of production. So everything got costly overnight, and few companies or few sectors were minting money at the cost of entire nation. And that's what I believe you also mentioned when you told about zero employment growth or less employment growth. And I fully agree with that statement that we need to look at capacity building. We need to be prepared for the boom before the actual boom comes. Then only we can take advantage of the boom. Like in the boom time, what happens? Most of the ports get clogged because we don't have the infrastructure to move raw material away from the port or the port product from the port. We don't have rail infrastructure. The rail infrastructure that we have is a very sorry state. Last 3 years, I would say, we were fortunate to have a good minister who had to go in bad circumstances because you can't undo the bad that is there in the last 40, 50 years overnight. But that's what democracy and media is all about. Because the policies that have plagued the economic landscape, for particularly the 2009-14 era, particularly after the Commonwealth Games, like the global economic crisis hit the world in 2009 or 2008 September. But India was not affected practically until October 2010. We were still continuing with our boom, though we were affected by the terrorist bomb blast and the Bombay attacks. But otherwise, the Indian economy was more or less cushioned compared to the world economy. But Commonwealth Games, the breakout of scams, and thereafter 3-4 years of total policy fallacies because of the corruption and scams, is what took out its toll on our economy. So, I think last 3 years we are getting out of that bundle of scams. Fortunately, the government today has shown the intent to take bold and right steps to kickstart the economy. while when we talk of resurgence, the middle class or the urban middle class, both in self-employed as well as salaried, are still feeling the pinch because the government has taken all the steps more from a socialistic perspective to bring the have-nots or the bottom portion of the population into the mainstream or to develop them rather than focusing the development on the headline numbers. But for the resurgence in the economy, government has identified various initiatives which it has made, like tax reforms or Make in India, Ease of Doing Business, Skill India, while the Swachh Bharat Mission or the Jan Dhan bank accounts were to bring the have-nots into the mainstream. So all these are macro steps, but last 2 years or initial 2.5 years of the government, what that led to, the industry felt orphaned because they were not getting the kind of support they needed from the government to come out of the issue that they were there. The GST has been introduced, but a lot needs to be done. Overly complex tax laws, particularly income tax laws, have become more complicated. Tax terrorism by lower level officials has multiplied, even though at the higher level, senior level, one can say that corruption has come down or practically very, very low, almost to a zero level. But at the same time, on a day-to-day level, in all walks of life, both state government and central government, corruption has multiplied. Search and seizure continue. Despite the online monitoring, today search and seizures are no more a tool for what we call information gathering, but more a tool of harassment and torture. And that needs to be stopped in a developed economy. Ease of doing business is a very good slogan that the government has given because it allows you to question all the issues that you face on a day-to-day basis. That one slogan I say is very important, and government is doing the right steps. But what has happened in the name of ease of doing business, most of the things that have been taken are for setting up new business, but no steps have been taken towards sustaining existing businesses. And the India's ranking, which is still at 130, it has to come to 50 or below 50. You have to take a step to sustain the existing business. You have to address the elephant in the room, which is corruption in all walks of life. Corruption is on a DNA. Revenue officials, the day they become IRS or in direct service, they believe that it's their right to extort money. That psychological get set up. How one will dismantle, I don't know. Because that is what they look at in everything that they do. Then what is it for me and how can I get it? And that needs to stop, then only the country can develop on the right path. To summarize, I would say a decent start has been made with actions and a host of matters for a resurgent economy. But the expectations are much higher. Government has itself set its bar higher with the Achhe Din slogan, of which Samvid is one of the authors, which has kindled hope for better results. And government needs to deliver, and I think industry needs to perform very well in the next 18 months if 2019 is to be successful. Thank you.
Some of the questions that I raised remain unanswered, so I'd expect the panelists to react to that. So if you, and I also request the panelists to remain where you are unless you feel that you think better when you stand up, then you could go to the podium. I pose my questions to Mr. Jawhar Sharkar, but before that, my question to you, on your second round, you mentioned corruption and governance and these issues. Clearly, values, identity, empowerment, value building, 90% of it comes from family life. The decay that has taken place in society, do you think it's on account of the governance, or is it because of a certain loss of values in your own families? How much have we as parents been able to do to our children that our forefathers did to our parents? That, I think, needs introspection. Maybe you believe that corruption is also driven and done by the government, but there's a lot of homework to be done at home. So how important is family life and family values, setting these in place? That would be my question to you, because you raised that on corruption. How would you address the issue of corruption? Just witch hunting, or is there transformation we need within ourselves where we have lacked? My question to my friend Johor would be, we've been talking about myth and reality of the world will become a smaller place with globalization, with privatization and liberalization. But the improprieties that we see in the world today are at 4 levels. Questionable governance of institutions in the name of democracy, which is leading to actually rising protectionism. Brexit, Grexit, trade blocs, they do not smack off openness. They are only open in terms of goods. But when it comes to visas, when it comes to labor movement, we don't have that kind of attitude. Increasing ethnicity everywhere in the world is increasing, leading to brutality and death. And that's a cultural issue. The third is the rising incidence of refugees. Refugees are fleeing all parts of the world and getting into countries where at once upon a time they were harbored and loved. Today, the whole issue of Brexit is because you don't want the refugees to come in, because you're going to sink with so many rats on your boat. So they're finding rejections in their destinations. And fourth, there is a problem of principle of centralized leadership. Do you think there's a problem of centralized leadership? And do you think there's a problem of caring society, inclusive growth? What is all this happiness of reality of India surging forward, shining India, when it's not really affecting the poorest of the poor, and you still have starvation deaths, you still have people hungry, shirtless, nameless? So I'd like you to address this, because that's your area, being the Cultural Secretary of Government of India. On the wrong end.
Shumon has given a series of questions, and I'll answer them only if I can attend to the 4 minutes that I've been given. Actually, we talked with the organizer for much more than 4 minutes. The topic is economic resurgence, myth or reality. So I'll first stick to the topic. And my submission is, this is the first time I want to not provoke Sambit into his Sambit type reactions. Because what I'm going to say is what makes sense to us. You see, I left a perfectly good private sector job in 1975 in a misplaced fit of patriotism to join the Indian Administrative Service. As I'm fond of saying, I joined the Soviet Socialist Republic of India. I have seen controls of a type that many of you who have seen. We used to determine how many peacock tail feathers would be exported to Saudi Arabia, as if the peacocks would oblige us by shedding that number of feathers. So I've seen the type of mindless control. The question is, so I'm not blaming anyone. I was also part of the 1991 team of Mr. Chidambaram, who smiled at the wrong times and was grouchy most of the time, but we helped him break down the Berlin Wall. Now, at the end of my life, after 42 years, I question myself, and I'm talking in a way aloud to myself. 4 decades, and let's have a look at the record we have. Human Development Index, India is number 131. Per capita GDP, 122. Index of Economic Freedom, 123. Literacy rate, 168. Global Hunger Index, 97. Jagat Ramka mentioned about ease of doing business, 130. I can go on with more statistics, but what am I trying to get across? All I'm trying to say is economic resurgence a myth or a reality? And I will still submit that I do not see any resurgence. I do not blame a government which is there for just 2 to 3 years. It has made a lot of statement. I don't blame the others as well, because as Shumon put it very correctly and somebody else put it very correctly, we have issues elsewhere. It's all there, and if you take up any particular issue, if you take GDP growth, we all know what it's going to be. plus minus 2%, plus minus 0.2 here and there. What does it matter? Do we have affordable capital? We talk about it. We don't. Is there any real solid economic growth? I come back to the city of Calcutta, my own city, after about 11 years, and I find that the only booming industry is what's housing and syndicates. That's only booming industry I see. I don't see. I was the industry secretary here during Mr. Buddhadev Bhattacharya's period. Tried my best, made an ass of myself, and moved on. Now, we are moving in for jobless growth. Growth in terms of 7.9, 9.7, it matters shit all to any one of us if there is no job involved. Because you can make profits out of jobless growth, but that's very unstable model. Now, I'm not blaming, as I started by saying, a government that's here for 3 years, because it really believes that it will stay here for 3 centuries, but it doesn't matter. I've seen others, during Indira Gandhi's period, thought he would be here for 3 millennia. The question is, the people are looking at you. If you look at one single policy, demonetization, maybe the intention behind it was very sincere. But I have seen the enrichment of the banking class overnight during the entire exercise. The Reserve Bank has come up and said that 1.35 lakh crores is money that was never in circulation. 16.41 lakh crores was the money in circulation on 31st March. Why aren't we coming up with a white paper and simply saying that against 16.41, we have 17.41 back? Now the question is, we have all gone through this survey. And I keep saying, enthusiasm is no substitute for delivery. Delivery depends upon a lot of things. The perpetual enrichment of tax collector is not only sickening, it has now reached cancerous proportions. What are we doing? Because you had to take the entire tax machinery with you when you went in for the drive, and the banking machinery with you when you went in for the drive. The two of them made Lulu out of the entire nation, and not one person has been punished. Not one person has been punished. Now, if you are, I am telling you with certainty, I have served the previous government also. Neither of them like me. ना बाहर पसंद करते ना घर पर जाने घर वापस घर से कोई पसंद करते हैं, कोई बात नहीं. What I'm saying is, I have served the other government also, and I've seen blatant making of money. But what's happening now? When I left Delhi 6-8 months ago, I found that while in the upper levels, it was almost clean. Somebody will know. I refer to one gentleman, a little largish, who's perhaps not in the same league as Mr. Modi. 1.5. But anyway, it's not like blatant daylight robbery that was going on. But the lower levels have increased their tentacles, and not one blighter gets punished. Not one. I took up cudgels in Akashvani and Doordarshan, where they bled the organization to make C-class serials and take it down to the rock bottom. Won't succeed. There are some invisible forces that keep holding them back. We look upon the government, irrespective of who they are right now. In fact, why irrespective? Because it's a government that has gone in for more demonstrations of cleanliness at the top, that you please start doing something at the middle and bottom. Because the excesses that take place deserve excesses in return. The world will not come to a halt. On IT and other claims, let's get off this claim-making bazaar. Somebody said 5 lakh new taxpayers have been added. The PIB said 31 lakhs have been added. Then somebody goes to the Red Fort and said 56 lakh have been added. I don't know what this fascination for 56. 56 number idhar, 56 number idhar, but it doesn't matter. 56 lakhs have been added. My submission is, isme koi jhagda nahi hai. If you really added 56, you'll get it back. The whole intention is to go in for a clean, transparent economy. And that requires more than just statements. You will have to give the message. You have more power than any single human being, any single Prime Minister in the Republic of India in the last 70 years. Please send the message down the line. Ki khachak, khachak, chalo, shuru karo. You can do it. And my submission is, economic research as of now is a bloated myth, not only a myth, but we must move in, because there's no further, because it's, you see, we are the same boat. I still belong to that group of optimists that believes, in spite of spending 42 years in a noxious bureaucracy, in spite of seeing my colleagues build 4-storied houses, when I stay next to a basti, where I have to hear all the galis at night, I mean on the other side of the wall, and where I retire with an embarrassing bank balance, there is absolutely no harm. We still believe that if there is an economic will, it is happening now. My only submission is, let's get beyond these arguments, let's go on with the job. There are other issues I could tell you about corruption. There's an article we'll bring out in Telegraph very soon. In the roots of it goes, in the last stage, as a historian my study was, that in the last stage, the Mughal Raj had become so putrid, so money-craving. Shah Jahan himself was immersed in corruption. Aurangzeb, for some reason, didn't go in for corruption, but he supported those who did, including Murshid Quli Khan. The short point is the transfer of power from this rotten Mughal bottom bureaucracy to the East India Company was seamless. They had a chance to bring in a fresh, transparent administration. All they did was tinker around the top. So every bloody peon who got a job thought, this is a Narega scheme for me, earn your own money scheme. That damn thing has to go. I have suspended more persons than is healthy for one single individual, but that doesn't help. I'm expressing my helplessness at the whole thing, and I'm saying that we would love to meet here in Taj Bengal again after 3 years and say, economic resurgence has started. Thank you very
much. Some of the questions that I raised, you perhaps you take that on, so I'm not giving questions further. I now turn to a man from your profession, a chartered accountant, who's spoken to you at length. But something that perhaps has been troubling me is that there's this gentleman called Bill Gates who did not own any mines, did not own any plantations. His assets actually went back home every evening, and that was his workers. He made his money on knowledge. And the world today is being driven by knowledge. I quote Peter Drucker, who says in 1986, the most advanced technology will languish in ignorance of tomorrow because the rate of inventions and innovations and the speed at which this is happening. So if wealth is to be made through innovations, through knowledge creation, and we see a model back to colonialism in another form, where the hardware belongs to some other country and the software is coming up here. How do you think India would be able to catch up with the wealth? What is the process of wealth creation? We have, in spite of the great debate of the population, where once upon a time we thought population is a curse, it's turned out to be the biggest dividend for India, because we happen to have 65% of our population in the youth, which is 15 to 59. The latest WHO says that your youth carries on to 65. In fact, they look at middle age from 65 to 77. And beyond that, the WHO really looks at past the middle age and senior citizens till the age of 90. So you're looking at a total change. But how are you going to use this demographic dividend? Where out of the 250 million people coming to the labor force, only 5% is skilled and employable. So how do you generate wealth? Knowledge, using HR, or organizational structure? Mr. Chetan Dalal, you could sit and talk. Would you please to address this issue?
I don't have a mic, so...
Oh, you can take mine.
Why should you? Now the norm has been said that we have to go to the podium.
No, you don't go to the podium. You stay here.
Good evening.
Nor do
folks.
you.
Once again,
Yes, it is.
pleasure to be here and with all the dignitaries on the stage. Question. Well, it's definitely a question which is not easy to answer.
Rising protectionism.
The broad subject that we are looking at is about
Increasing
the myth or reality
ethnicity.
about economic resurgence, and in that, wealth creation. I would like to go into a more of a micro view rather than a macro view.
Increasing
So far we've been
ethnicity.
getting a lot of
Increasing
macro views
ethnicity.
about the GDP and per capita income growth of
Ethnicity.
exports and
With
what
brutality
have you.
and death.
I would like to show you from
Refugee.
an average person's eyes as to
And
what is
hate.
this economic resurgence that we are looking at.
And centered leadership. Sorry, Gary.
Well, when I was born in the 50s. In those years, let's take a servant, a person who would come to your house. He would be very shabbily dressed, maybe with torn clothes. He would be very happy only with probably a cup of tea and some couple of biscuits that you would give him, and he would adore you. And you would pay him virtually less than peanuts also. And his life used to survive on that. That was what life was about. And majority of our people were at that level. In those days also, below the poverty line, I don't remember the percentages, but there were huge numbers. It seems majority of our people weren't getting 2 square meals a day. It is very possible that even in the current situation, even in the current times, there is a very substantial percentage of people who may still be below the poverty line and who may not be getting 2 square meals. But let me tell you something else, friends. I have seen something which has amazed me in the recent past. What I have seen, and this is a fact, I have an assistant, absolutely average background, nothing to look forward to, mediocrity. Probably he may not even be going out to eat to a restaurant. The other day he came to me and told me, okay, sir, I am going to send my son to the United States for further education. I was very impressed. So I said, how are you going to manage it? He says, no problem. It's about 55 to 60 lakhs that I have to arrange for, but it will be done. He actually said that. He said that, and kudos to the Modi Sarkar. He said that this Modi Sarkar has brought me into a new way of thinking. Now we want to progress, and it doesn't matter. Somehow or the other, I'll make arrangements for the money. Now, I didn't go into his fund position, I didn't go into anything specifically, but what I do know is that there is a difference now. You take people from the lowest strata of the society, people who probably don't have money are also now economically far better off. I don't know whether you remember, friends, a few years ago, a driver's daughter came first in our institute. She was a gold medalist in our Institute of Chartered Accountants. I think that calls for itself. I don't think in the 60s, when I was going to school, when I was a young boy, you could even think that a personal servant could send his children to school. Now, would you call this economic resurgence that yes, now you have people who literacy is getting on, technology is getting on. You will also be surprised that I have been to certain villages and certain places far away from my home city of Mumbai. I went to some ordinary sweetmeat shop, and the person who was serving me, who was asking me to select on some sweets, he came again in absolutely average of probably torn clothes. So I started speaking to him in Hindi. Ke sir, don't worry, tell me what you want. We aim to please. And after I finished, that person said, it was our pleasure that you came here. So I just asked him, I was curious. He said that no, I went to night school, I did my study, and today I have worked during the day in the sweetmeat shop, but I am now fairly self-sufficient. I am able to send my daughters to school, I am able to live a good life, I am very happy. Now, these are not stray instances, friends. You will find that life is changing. Again, with due respect to what our other speakers have said, there is or there is no resurgence. In my humble opinion, a lot of changes have taken place for the betterment. You take even countries outside India. I have been outside India in the years in the 80s, 90s, in the first decade of this century, and now you will find a big difference in the respect in the kind of dealing capabilities that Indians have shown. And Indians are good businessmen. Indians provide good service capabilities. There are the bad sheep. I know there are people who are scamsters, there are people who have done wrong also. But all these business practices, expansion across the world cannot be possible so easily unless there is some improvement in our economic situation back here. I am told that one of the exchanges, MCX, some years ago, was the number 2 exchange in the world after London exchange. Now, again, it means that when an exchange is world-class exchange at that level in terms of trading, it means again economic activity is there at its peak. And in the last 2 years, a couple of steps, one of them being this demonetization, that has also shown how much of wealth has been accumulated. It has been brought into the forefront. A lot of people are unhappy about it. A lot of people have taken very negative views about it. But I, for one, am very happy. And friends, because I come from a world wrongdoing where I investigate these large scams, tell me scams can happen where there is money, no? Can scams really take place without any money when you look at 7,000, 10,000 crores rupees of scam? And the best part of it, friends, and this you will not believe it, but it is a factual situation, that today people are scared of doing something that is wrong. Just yesterday I was speaking to somebody, a very senior chartered accountant. He says, Chetan bhai, now all those hawala, all those entries, all those things are now on the decline. They are on, all these are signs of good economic wealth creation. All these are signs that literacy is increasing, technology is increasing, awareness and visibility is increasing. Yes, I do agree that this poverty line, that these huge strata of society where we don't have equal, they are there. But my guess or my feeling is that everything will certainly decline over a period of time, and maybe someday India will become a leading economic power in the world. So thank you very much.
There are two types that make the world, the optimist and the pessimist. And as you stand on the seashore looking at the seas, somebody sees the wave coming towards you, and that's resurgence. Somebody sees the wave clash on the surf and withdraw, and that what you see is withdrawal or no resurgence. So it's a matter of opinion, or so it seems, till we clinch that issue. One of the issues that perhaps I need to ask is, what is the organization that we need today, and how are the organizational structures changing? For instance, if I were to list 20th century with 21st century, in the 20th century the whole idea was domestic, the concept was of top-down hierarchy. Today we are talking about the growth concept of bottoms-up. In the 20th century we had a pyramidal structure. Today we have a web-centric structure. In the 20th century we believed in mass production. Today we are talking about customer satisfaction and customization. In the 20th century we believed in wealth extraction, mines and plantations, etc. Today we believe in wealth creation. In 20th century we believed in size of assets, how big are you? Today it is a quantum of intellectual power. In the 20th century we believed in employment security. Today we are talking about employability. Has Indian organizations changed accordingly? Or are you still caught between the fire and the deep blue sea? Mr. Ramesh will address that issue.
I like this. I'm still trying to find its connection to economic resurgence. But let me begin in good order by thanking the moderator, if I may use the term, Professor Suman Mukherjee, for reminding me and enthusing me that I am part of the youth. And in a few years from now, I will reach middle age when I touch 65. Thank you very much. And I'm sure all of you here will feel elated as I am. and that helps me, of course, in what I'm saying. But let me also point out to you when we talk on the subject of economics. The sacred cows of economic theology graze in the greener pastures of North Block than in any other pastures. So we must distinguish between economic theology and economic rationalism. Now, this whole thing about myth or reality, it depends on who's looking at it. If you are in the ruling party, whichever way party it is, what is good is reality, what is bad is myth. If you are in the opposition, what is good is myth, and what is bad is reality. So I think we could keep talking until the cows come home as to whether economic resurgence is a myth or a reality, and to what extent. I'll quickly come back to the questions which he has raised. But I must tell you that when you're dealing with the government sometimes, you'll have this challenge. Dr. Jayant gave a lot of statistics about economic resurgence, or all the good things which have happened. Absolutely true that we have had a great growth, one of the fastest growths across economies in the world, of the size comparable to ours, and more importantly in recent times, we have the highest in history, in our own history perhaps, of foreign exchange reserves. We had to mortgage gold at a point in time. Today we have close to $400 billion of reserves. We have fiscal deficit under control, current account deficit under control. We have inflation, low single digits. Even if you take out food inflation, whatever, you could slice and dice it in whichever way. Yes, the index of adoption is not as robust as it should be. There are other negative indicators like bank credit growth is again not robust as it should be. There are a whole host of factors. But for a simple conclusion as to whether economic resurgence has been there or not, go back to whatever time. You take the last few years, you take an even longer period, the reality is that there has been a dramatic change. From the time you and I started our lives to what it is today. China brought down its poverty by 84%. It put 600 million people out of poverty. India has brought down its poverty by around 6%. Yeah, there will be poverty. I would be as cynical as many of you would like to be and receive the applause if I were for being cynical and say that there is poverty here next to my door. Is my servant better off than what she was 15 years ago? The answer is yes. But is she poor relative to me? The answer is yes. But that by itself doesn't make it not economically resurgent. Now let me come to the questions. I know we'll have time a little later. First, let me contradict our moderator when he said death is certain. Sir, you will receive applause if you also had said taxes are also certain. Because if it were not so, my good friends here will be out of service. Having said that, I think he raised a fundamental question. What contributed to success in the past or economic resurgence will not be the factors which will contribute to economic resurgence in the future. The reality is you're dealing with 1.3 billion, close to 1.3 billion population. The reality is the pace of change which I spoke to you all in the morning, and technology is so dramatically different that what you will find in organizations, what required let's say 100 people, today I can do it with 2 persons or even less. But most importantly, what we are seeing in organizations is what we call the emergence of paraprofessionals. If I am checking my own blood sugar with the aid of a small instrument, I am displacing a qualified radiologist. I don't require a doctorate in radiology. is as good as a person who's fully qualified. A para-nurse, a paramedic, a nurse with the aid of technology is as good as any doctor, as any MD. That is the reality which the medical profession is facing. So the fact of the matter is, technology is not only bringing jobs down, it's creating the need for certain skill sets which are currently not available. The skill sets which are currently available, you don't have the equivalent jobs. It's a disturbing factor. Organizations are addressing this. Organizations are rising to the fact that there is a distributed workforce. I don't need in one office in Calcutta. I can have my people all over India, anywhere, and still operate on a daily basis, which is the reality. So we are seeing a distributed workforce which is happening. You're seeing a workforce which is surely technology enabled. But you're also seeing the fact that the jobs and services which require employment are no longer required. So all of us are realizing that in any piece of work, whether it is in healthcare, whether it is in accounting, whether it is in tax, whether it is even in legal services, in many factors, you cannot do without technology. Organizations are embedding technology into their business so deeply that the successful organizations of the future will be those who are deeply embedded with embracing technology. And if you look at and added to the complications of robotics, process automation, etc., the countries of the future will be Japan, Germany, South Korea. They're investing so heavily into robotics and artificial intelligence in big time. We need to do that. The fact is, we also have our challenges of people. But that to the specific question which you asked, I believe that you will see all organizations, either because the prices customers are driving are requiring lower prices than yesterday. You have no choice but to automate to reduce price. When you automate, you have many other advantages. You don't have an absentee workforce. You don't have unions to manage. You don't have to deal with productivity because it's the same. You don't have to deal with emotions because the machine is emotionless. There are so many things which are advantages and organizations are realizing. Disturbing, but the trend is a reality. I'll take a minute to answer the other question which you had asked. You had alluded to on Basel. Now Basel, Professor Suman Mukherjee said that we don't have that many MPAs because we are applying Basel II. My question is, what is Basel? It's a measure, right? So it's almost like saying that if I want to say that I have no fever, all I need to do is cool the thermometer. Would the change from Basel II to Basel I to Basel III make the difference? Today, an asset is non-performing when it's 90 days past due. 90 days. The fact is, the person has not paid on due date for more than 90 days. What more do you want? As a signal that there is a problem with the asset. I'm saying you have fever. Don't tamper with the thermometer. Deal with the fever. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll react to that later because I don't want to start a debate with me and Professor Ramesh. But the point remains is, if I'm sick and the thermometer is pulled away and I assume that I'm not sick, does it mean I'm terminally dead? So the question is, should we look at viability only in terms of liquidity? How fast do you return it? Or should we look at it in terms of viability? Whether you'll at all be able to repay it. And there should be a distinction between the two, and I wish the banking could address that. But that's my question to him, perhaps in the second round, that how can we untap the resources that have gone into the banking system? Because if you don't do it, then user costs go up, and even for sneezing, we will have to be paying for it. What I liked about his speech is, he said whatever is good is a myth, and whatever is bad is a reality. And that brings me back to the whole idea of watching a mirror. You know, whatever you see in a mirror is a myth, because your right is not left, and the left, as a matter of norm, is never right. So the mirror throws back the defect that you see in your visual forms. The mirror always says you are a very handsome man, but the reality is Hrithik Roshan is streets ahead. So what you see is indeed bad, but what is the reality is actually good. So I take that as a good example, but now I'm going to pose this question with a bit of hard data. And this is not reality, this is not a myth. Let's compare India with China. Steel production in India, 25 million. And by the 1985, nobody knew Russia would get out of the map, of the global map. 1985, nobody knew that China would be where China is today. Steel production, 25 million India, 133 million China. Trade, 75 billion India, 491 billion China. Scientific papers, including patent rights, 15,000 in 1980 in India, which goes down to 12,000 now, 1,000 in 1980 in China, which goes up to 22,000 today. Per capita income, India in dollars 440, China 990. So what happened? Has democracy served the country, or has there been a ploy to stay on in power by throwing dust in the eyes of the people? Do you think we should be looking at people in terms of who's speaking, or should be looking at leadership and what are they saying? Do you think there is indeed a crisis of leadership? And who could answer that better than a leader, Sambit Patra?
Are you saying the person to your left is not right?
I'm saying the left is never right.
Thank you. And to all the gentlemen on the stage who are yet to become middle-aged men, namaskar for an infant. And since we are discussing about larger issue and leadership, and since a very erudite Professor Mukherjee began very spiritually by invoking Krishna, Rama, Jesus and Allah, let me begin in a very different way as well. Na kashthe vidyati devo, na pashane na mrunamaye, bhave hi vidyate devo, smad bhavo hi karanam. Na kashthe, not in the wood resides the Lord. Na pashane, not in the stone resides the Lord. Na mrunamaye, not in the idol or the statue resides the God. Bhave hi vidyate devo, smad bhavo hi karanam. He resides in the bhava, he resides in the emotion, and wherever bhava siddha ho jata hai, to khambe narsingh avatar prakat ho jate. Resurgence and economy is all about faith, belief. Wherever this word resurgence takes shape, the next word that takes shape and form is leadership. Because if we have a system in pits, then there has to be a hand which offers to pull up the system. And that's the reason as to why leadership is extremely essential and core to the debate which deals with resurgence, any form of resurgence. And since I have been invited to speak about leadership, let me tell you I am a medical fraternity person, I am a doctor. You expecting a doctor to speak about economics, I would not go into the norms of economics as such, finer details of economics. But I believe you would all agree with me, you all knowing the facts of economics, that economics and energy are directly proportional to each other. You have been speaking of the demographic dividend of India. Well, yes, it's a fact that by 2020, even if you are not to be counted as middle-aged men, even if you have not reached your middle age by now, by sheer statistics, the demographic dividend of India would be such that the mean age of Indian population would be somewhere around 29 years, almost 60% age. The workforce would be very energetic. The issue is, with this kind of energy, it is but natural that the economy would be following, because youth means family, youth means buying a house, youth means buying, youth means fashion. So with this kind of buying ability, it is only resurgence of economy. All we need, a synergy of a leader who has the same kind of energy as the energy of the demography. If the leader who is pulling up the country has the same kind of energy as the populace of the country, only then the economy would converge to a point which would be resurgent. And I can gladly, proudly state that, well, yes, my leader, your leader, and our Prime Minister today, Mr. Modi, possesses that amount of energy, and it needs no debate. It needs no debate whether he's energetic or not. Even our deadliest opponents would agree to the fact that he's one of the most energetic men they have ever met. We have the energy for the resurgence. Secondly, and extremely importantly, the bigger facts of economic resurgence, be it GDP, be it the fiscal deficit, be it the CAD, the current account deficit, be it the inflation, all these have been addressed by my esteemed colleagues in the talks that they delivered right now. Let me come to some very emotional aspects of it. I firmly believe, as far as the A, B, C, D, E, F of economic resurgence under the leadership of Mr. Modi is concerned, it is as follows. What is the A of economic resurgence? The A of economic resurgence under the regime of Mr. Modi's leadership is assertiveness of India. India has asserted itself not only in the global flora, but also in the minds of people of this beautiful country, as was right now pointed out by Mr. Chetan when he said that even the poor people, they feel that, well, yes, I have an aspiration and my aspiration should be met. So the A of economic resurgence is assertiveness and aspiration of billions of Indians under the leadership of Mr. Modi, and quote unquote, with Mr. Modi saying, "Main hoon na, aap badho to sahi, main hoon." And the B of economic resurgence of Mr. Modi is both bold and basics. See, I'm a young man. Why I would say that bold steps have been taken? See, I have stayed in Delhi for a while, and I have always narrated this incidence of my life in every forum that I spoke about economy. My father once wanted to sell off his property in Bhubaneswar, wanted to come and settle in Delhi because one of his sons was staying in Delhi, the other son stays abroad. So he felt at this age of his life he should stay with me. He wanted to buy a property. I don't have a house in Delhi. So he was ready to sell his hard-earned property in Bhubaneswar and wanted to buy a small flat or a house in Delhi. He could not do that because in Delhi the system is, if you want to buy a house worth 50 lakhs, it has to be 20 odd lakhs through cash and 30 odd lakhs through check. So someone suggested my father, well, yes, what if you have everything in white money? We have a mechanism which can convert your white money to black money as well. My father told, my God, why do I have to do that? It's better I'll come and stay in the hostel where my son stays rather than disposing and converting my white money into black money. He told, unheard anywhere in the world. There is a mechanism to convert white money into black money. And let me tell you, friends, everyone right from the Prime Minister till the Member of Parliament, the Councillor and the MLA, everyone knew this fact. Everyone knew it, that this is what is happening. But none had the dare to take the bull by the horn. Here is the Prime Minister. Right, wrong, you can discuss, debate till the cows return home. I'm not going to get into the details. But I can say that here is the Prime Minister, a Prime Minister who believes in economic resurgence because he at least dared to catch hold of the bull by the horn, saying nothing doing, ye chalta hai attitude nahi chalega, badalna padega. Basics. B for bold and B for basics. Here is the Prime Minister who talks about toilets most number of time, a topic which no other Prime Minister, leader, or leave aside a bureaucrat would be touching upon. From the ramparts of Red Fort, he has talked about the basics, because the basic in this country is, if eating is important, defecating is equally important. We all felt that eating was what was determining the economy of the country, none of us felt how we were defecating was equally important in determining the health of the nation. Here is a Prime Minister who gave equal importance to eating and the process of defecation, and I believe this is back to basics, bold and basics. The C of the economic resurgence under Mr. Modi is the competitiveness. Right now, ease of doing business. Well, people spoke about what rank India holds, 130th rank. Let me say that we have climbed up 12 positions. That is what is important. Previously, we were 12 positions behind. Under this new resurgent leadership, we have climbed up 12 positions, and that is what is an achievement in a small span of time. Competitive index. We have seen the competitive index by the World Economic Forum. India has become the only country for 2 consecutive years. India has consistently climbed up 16 positions to be where it is today. So naturally, in the competitiveness in the global arena, India has performed well. A, B, C. I think 1 more minute to complete D, E, F. D definitely is the paradigm shift towards development. Lot was spoken about infrastructure. I would not go into the details of how infrastructure is changing the country. But if I read the statistics, I don't understand as to why it was happening, that there was a lethargic pace of infrastructural change. We had only a few kilometers of road being laid down, while the potential of this country was to lay down hundreds of kilometers of road per day. And I believe this kind of change is possible today. The paradigm shift towards development. E is the effectiveness of the administration, and one of the most important examples in this field was what was quoted by Ravi Shankar Prasad yesterday, when he rightly stated that none other than the former Prime Minister Mr. Rajiv Gandhi said that if you let 100 paisa, 1 rupee to the lowest level, only 15 paisa reached the lowest level. So naturally there was leakages and pilferages. So effectiveness is the extent that because of direct benefit transfer, we have saved 50,000 crores. While there was a time, I'm sorry to state, we were discussing about the losses. 1.76 lakhs crore was lost to such and such scams. Today we are discussing about the gains. So account book only shows resurgence of the Indian economy under the leadership of Mr. Modi. And by the way, sir, though you have asked, Professor Mukherjee has asked this question to, I think, Mr. Arun, that family values in corruption. Is it not that family should be teaching good values and inculcating good values as far as corruption is concerned? But since I'm a politician, let me please begin by teasing this so that Mr. Arun can complete it. Well, yes, I agree that family and corruption has a great deal of importance. India at least has been a casualty of family and corruption for long. And E, effectiveness, F at the end, 10 seconds. F is the biggest factor of resurgence. F is faith. And I addressed the Australian Parliament only about 2 months ago, and I told them, look at the beauty of Indian people and their faith on this new leadership. People can read the intentions through eyes. You may think that people are immature, you may think that people are unaware, you may quote statistics saying that huge population of this country is illiterate, but the beauty of this spiritually aware, awake country called India is people can read the intentions of their leader through the eyes, and that's the reason as to why, despite the fact that demonetization was taxing for most of the people, but people of this huge country, 125 crore people affected by demonetization, only process across the world, not even the partition of this country touched everyone, but demonetization touched everyone. But look at the maturity of the people, because they had faith in the leadership which was taking up the economy, that despite being taxed, they stood there in patience, knowing very well that intention was more important than the statistics. Thank you.
I think Dr. Patra was again talking about a cultural reality, began with Sanskrit, and I just remind him that Krishna is the same person who said, Sambhavami yuge yuge. So you do have resurrection repeatedly. Whenever there's a crisis of management, cultural, context-wise, It's not evil and good, it's things that happen as it is. He has mentioned the A, B, C, D, E, F factor. So I'll ask him to address the X, Y, Z factors. The X factor is what is it that keeps Modi so popular in spite of so many questions that have been arising out of demonetization, out of GST, about the kind of thing that happened only yesterday, where things have not been taking a beautiful stance. What is the Y factor? Why is it that India does not get its act together? And what is the Z factor? What is it that will make India reach the zenith, and when is it and how is it will bypass China? So these are the three issues that perhaps you can address, and I'll just request him that as long as he keeps saying PM Modi, it's all right, because if you're talking about Modi's policy, you might just think it's Lalit Modi, and that would perhaps put us at a bit of an unease. Now let's turn to my questions down the road. I will ask you to address it just in 2 minutes, because we'll keep some time for questions from the floor. 2 quick minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Mukherjee. The first question was most of the assets created during 2002 to 2007 went into gold, stocks, bonds, etc. I think that is only part of the reality. If you look at the gross capital formation, if you look at investments, the savings rate, they all show that the economy did grow in real terms as well. About jobless growth, I think Mr. Ramesh has mentioned it. One of the things I was struck by in a recent meeting, there is an auto company, it put in an equipment which was worth just 5 crores. The significance is not in the capital that was invested. It displaced 72 people, and it raised the quality of the output. That is the technological disruption that is going to take place. More and more things are going to be done by robots, by artificial intelligence. 3D printing is something which is already knocking at our doors. By 2030, most of the production being done by human agency in advanced countries like the US will probably dwindle to a few thousands only. There is something which Bill Gates has mentioned. He said that by 2030 and beyond, a lot of people will not be employed gainfully in the manufacturing industry, and they will have to be given doles or some kind of sustenance. And that is why he said that the more companies use automation or robots, the more they should be taxed. But that is something which is there for another discussion. Jobless growth is a thing which not only India, but all the West is grappling with. China is investing very heavily into automation and robotics. And China also knows that it has to contend with it much earlier than India does. So this is a vexing problem. We don't know really whether we can still keep on investing in textiles and leather and the labor-intensive industries like handicrafts, because there are cheaper sources of production like Bangladesh next door, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, the whole of Africa, which will see a huge growth in the next 20 years or so. So we have to address this problem, and we have to put our minds together to come to a conclusion. The reason for the fall of the rupees against the dollar and other strong currencies, of course, everybody knows that it depends on the strength of the economy, on your exports. If you have been exporting more foreign currency will come in, and then your own domestic currency will strengthen. So I suppose that again is something which I'll leave for later. On NPA, Mr. Ramesh has again mentioned it. Just to take the power sector, one statistic, if your income of let's say a power company is not enough to service its debt, then the ratio of income to debt servicing is less than 1. And that is the fate of 70% of the power companies in the country at the moment. That is something which is very worrisome. So NPAs, it is not about Basel II or Basel I. If your income itself is unable to service your interest burden, which you have run up against a bank loan, then how are you going to survive? How is the bank going to survive? That is the twin balance sheet problem, and we need to really address this. Finally, on agricultural distress and food sufficiency, we are food self-sufficient at the moment, but our productivity is low. There is fragmentation of land holdings. We need three things. One is flow of credit to the agricultural sector, which has been pointed out by different committees, by economists. Two, high quality seeds. And three, the most worrisome problem is about the water scarcity that is staring us in the face. We have only 4% of the freshwater reserves of the planet, and we have to sustain a population which is about 10%. I'm not wrong? No, it is about 16%, 17%,
Yes.
and only with 4% of the freshwater reserves. If we continue to grow rice in Punjab, Haryana and Western UP, where you are using pump sets and free electricity, we are spelling doom for
Keep it within 2
people
minutes,
living
right.
there, and we just cannot survive. So that is one problem about water. We have to manage it efficiently. We have to use it as a scarce resource. And the last point is about the environment. We also need to be very, very careful, because if our health is going to fail, if we are going to do damage to the environment in an irretrievable manner, our economy is not going to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar. Jawahar, would you take your time and do as fast as possible, because we have really run out of time, and the casualty is watched in the last white benches, which means that quite a large number of people have moved away.
Suman has made my job easier by putting in 3 to 4 points, which are more or less can be bundled into one question. He said rising protectionism, then ethnicity and right wing, without saying it so explicitly, hate and refugees. So it basically boils down to sociology and history, and all of it lumps down to the current state of unrest all over the world, where people seem to make illogical choices. That's the bottom line of what he's saying. Protectionist choices, Brexit only, I only. It only boils down to, you see, at my age I can sort of start pontificating a bit. If there are two types of stupidity that I have seen in my 65 years, extreme stupidity, one of them is extreme left, the other is extreme right. These are two stupidities with which we have grown up. And at the end of the day, while it's good enough to make hot air statements, when you come down to governance, you're neither left nor right. You have to govern the way it can be governed. That's all. And that was my job as one of the translators of policy. Now, if you look at the left being thrown out by Mamata Banerjee, I don't know whether this tape will reach her, but I have this board outside my house, no Modi, no Didi, I've had enough. Now, Mamata Banerjee can be said to be socialism with syndicates. You have on the right side what I think Arun Shuri called it, socialism with cows. Either way, you have to take a central weight. But right now, we are all going in for extreme choices, and that is very dangerous. Not everyone can be right. Now I'm using right in the sense of correctness. And sustain the world. You see, Trump cannot go on saying the white racial supreme is the right.
You were good.
Without saying they are wrong. You can't have a Brexit that says only Great Britain. You can't have everyone saying only me, only me, only me, only me. And then expect the world to be in peace. If every nation votes for only me parties, only me leaders, that maturity of judgment that a nation has as a collective unit disappears. And you are all voting for xenophobia. You're all going to vote in for a possibility of confrontation and war that may completely destroy the whole world at a time. The world is so interconnected that a choice or wrong choice made by one country rebounds on others. So this is the way it's going on, and that is my observation as somebody who's dealt with these subjects. They are not economics, but economics is at the end of the day only one of the analysis that keeps the world ticking or about to blow up. Either or. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting point there. Somebody mentioned, why do we want diversity? And the answer to that is because we learn most from people who are least like us. So therefore we want diversity, because it's knowledge for us. Mr. Jagatramka, please, would you like to sum it up as fast as possible?
Yeah, one of the things that he mentioned was family values and ethics. Yes, I do believe and can personally vouch that family integrity, family ethics are the building blocks, and moral science and civics, which used to be an important subject in schools in our time, have been taken off the syllabus today. So far as I understand. And that is something we need to put back in the schools today. We need to reinstill the education system, ethics and integrity, particularly if you feel that in the airport the way everybody jump the queue, there is no queue, everything.
I think
all the things we can mention, but we understand. So that is something we need to do. And I would also like to touch on your XYZ, because he may be treated as a biased person, but I am one who was in Gujarat the whole of Modi's reign as CM, and I can vouch for it. Why Modi is strong? Because he does not look for personally for himself in anything. Whatever he is prepared to do, if it is good for the nation, if it is good for the masses, he is prepared to do. If it is something good for one individual, he will say no. You never had a leader like him in the last 70 years, I can tell you, and we are fortunate to have him.
Don't say 70 years. Don't say 70 years.
Okay. At least in my lifetime, 30, 40 years, I have not seen.
Right.
The thing is, you can see in the choice of cabinet, we are not having a defense minister for the sole reason that he can't enter defense ministry to a person who will eat the defense funds day and night.
Okay. I just got
that is something we all need to answer as a nation.
Hello. I just got a message.
I just want to add one line, sir.
The message says we have to wind up now.
Okay, one line.
So I like him to have the last word.
The thing is, we all have a very bad habit as a masses, that if somebody is doing good, we believe that he should be 100% perfect, even 5% imperfection, we take it. No, he is not entitled to that. But as a human being, everybody has imperfections, imperfections. And if somebody is 80% perfect, we need to take him as a perfect gentleman instead of using the 20% imperfection to throw him out.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jagatrampa. Dr. Sambit Patra, the others have spoken even earlier, so I'll have to ask them to stay back and allow him to speak, and maybe we'll have to call it a day, because I've just got a summon that they will be physically thrown out if we don't end up within 5 minutes. So, Dr. Patra.
The XYZ of Mr. Modi was the question to me. Now let me be extremely short. X factor generally is considered as something which is secretive, which is anonymous, which is something which is not presumed by the generalities or by the masses, but something which nonetheless exists. Now what is this X factor of Mr. Modi and his governance? I believe the feeling that the Prime Minister is there, is watching, the big boss is watching everything. I cannot be corrupt because the big boss is watching from some corner, is the X factor of Mr. Modi. And how has this changed? There was a regime, I would not go into politics, there was a regime where every minister thought that he was the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister did not think that he was the Prime Minister. He, without taking name, because I do not want to indulge in politics, I would call him as the one who existed as the accidental Prime Minister. So the accidental Prime Minister did not have the X factor versus the assertive Prime Minister who has the X factor. The why, be it Mr. Modi or be it any top leader of the world, Y always stands for yes. I can do it. Together we can do it. I am confident we will do it. And this factor of yes in Mr. Modi, कि मैं करूंगा और करके रहूंगा, is the Y factor of Mr. Modi. And the Z factor for India, because you asked what is the Z factor which would take India to the zenith of success, I believe again lies in cultural nationalism, which our dear friend, humbly I would say, Mr. Hamid Ansari disliked, but I would say only when this great country which discovered zero realizes the importance of it discovering zero, boldly stands up and say, well, yes, ye Bharat hai, and we have discovered what none was discovered elsewhere, only then India would get back its position where it was. Till we fall back on the West, thinking that everything would be guided by the West, till then we would never reach the zenith. Thank you.
Right. I'll end off by saying that what he ended off was a famous film done by one of my former students, Ashok Vishwanathan, which says Shunnotike Shuru. So you're looking at that circles. And the other time I see that zero is when you're loading your mobile and you put it on and it keeps going in circles till the happiness sort of radiates. So on that note, I think we will all rise and we will all believe that there will be a cultural factor, an Indian factor, the Indianness factor, and the mind of its own which will be fearless, that will make India awaken to its true freedom. Bande Mataram, Jai Hind. You do?
Yes, I do. Acha, do I have to sit down again?
Friends, just 5 minutes, please be seated. Please be seated while we offer the hearty vote of thanks to our panelists. Please, just 5 minutes. Friends, indeed it was a great day of knowledge and interaction. It gives me immense pleasure to extend this hearty vote of thanks to our panelists on the topic Economic Resurgence, Myth or Reality. It was really, esteemed panelists have made full justice to the topic, well moderated by our Professor Dr. Suman Kumar Mukherjee. I extend my hearty vote of thanks Mr. Shambit Patra, whose witty and sharp remarks was very insightful. Would like to thank Mr. Jawahar Sarkar, whose vast experience was visible in his deliberation. We must also thank Professor Dr. Suman Mukherjee, whose academic excellence was shining through his deliberation. Sir, your question on remarks by the panelists has helped to make the lesson more lively and bring the best out of the panelists. I would like to thank our very own CA PR Ramesh. Sir, you rightly said, don't tamper with the thermometer, deal with the fever. We must also thank Dr. Jayan Dasgupta and CA Chetan Dalal. Further, I also extend my thanks to Mr. Arun Jagatramka for his powerful insight on the topic. May I request all present to put your hand together for a round loud of applause for our panelists. At the end, I thank all of you, the valued guests, learned speakers, for gracing the occasion and actively participating in the conference. I thank the sponsors, our media partner, the executive committee members, secretariat of the association, the management of the Taj, and all the others in making this event a grand success. Thank you.
Mic check, 1 2. Mic check. Check.